هل تشكل الثورات العربية التي تجتاح المنطقة امتدادا لحالة المقاومة؟ هل هي انقلابات للإسلاميين أم ثورة شعوب على أنظمتها؟ أين روسيا اليوم من هذا الحراك؟ وما هو موقعها في النظام العالمي؟ هل سنشهد ذوبانا للثلج الروسي بسياسات ومواقف ساخنة؟ من داخل البيت الروسي معكم زينب صفار، تابعونا. الاستراتيجية والسياسة العالمية والأمن والعلوم والدراسات واتحاد الحضارات كلمات تلخص شخصية البروفيسور الروسي فيتالي نعومكن. هو رئيس المركز الدولي للدراسات الاستراتيجية والسياسية في موسكو منذ عام 91 ويشغل منصب خبير في مجلس الأمن الروسي. عمل الدكتور نعومكن رئيساً لدائرة الشرق الأوسط في معهد الدراسات الشرقية في الأكاديمية الروسية للعلوم منذ عام 84، وترأس تحرير مجلة فاستوك أورينتس التي تصدرها أكاديمية العلوم الروسية منذ عام 98، إلى جانب عمله أستاذاً في كلية السياسات العالمية في جامعة موسكو الحكومية منذ عام 2003. تنقل البروفيسور نعومكن خلال حياته العملية في مواقع إدارية وأكاديمية وحكومية عدة، حيث كان عضواً في مجلس السياسة الخارجية لروسيا التابع لوزير الشؤون الخارجية، وعمل أستاذاً زائراً عام 2003 في قسم العلوم السياسية في جامعة كاليفورنيا. وخلال الفترة بين العامين 72 و 77 تنقل بين عدد من الدول خلال عمله في وزارة الخارجية الروسية، وكانت أولى خبرات نعومكن العملية هي عمله بعد تخرجه مباشرة عام 68 محاضراً في الجامعة العسكرية التي انتقل منها إلى جامعة موسكو عام 70. ألف الدكتور نعومكن كتباً ودراسات بعدة لغات في مجالات العلاقات الدولية ودراسات الاستراتيجية وسياسات النفط والدراسات الإسلامية والتاريخ وقضايا الشرق الأوسط وآسيا الوسطى ومنطقة القوقاز. ومن أحدث أعماله المنشورة الإسلام المتطرف في آسيا الوسطى بين القلم والبندقية الصادر عام 2005، وذئاب اليمن الحمراء الكفاح من أجل الاستقلال الصادر عام 2004، ونزاع الشرق الأوسط الذي صدر في مجلدين عام 2003. ماذا يخبرنا البروفيسور نعومكن عن المقاربة الروسية للحراك العربي الذي يجتاح المنطقة الآن في ظل وصول الإسلاميين إلى مراكز السلطة؟ وما هي سياسة روسيا اليوم مع عودة الصائد النمور فلاديمير بوتين إلى سدة الرئاسة؟ Dr. Naumkin, you had vast scopes of interest ranging from medieval history, Islamic heritage, archaeology, the ethno-political conflicts, the international relations, and so on and so forth. But your major focus was on the Middle East. What drew your attention? What things drew your attention actually to this region, and why did you focus on Islam in particular?
It's very difficult to explain, but it's what I am doing. It's my life, you know. It's
as a Russian, I mean.
Yeah,
yes.
As a Russian, of course. But you know, Russia, as you know, is a very interesting country because we are not only the Orthodox Christian country, but the country of 20 million of Muslims, and we're a Eurasian country. That's why I think from my childhood, say we were living together with Christians and Muslims together, and my interest was lying in the area. I don't know why. So I decided just to be specialist in this very area. So for me, these ideas and Islam was very attractive. I was attracted by the wisdom of a lot of books I read when I was.
Al-Ghazali was one of them because it was the subject of your dissertation.
First object of interest, my dissertation. I was working on that when I was student at Moscow University. Then I went to Cairo, at Cairo University, and wrote my dissertation. And I translated some parts of one of his greatest books, Ihya Ulumuddin, to Russian, and the people are still fond of reading this translation because it's available.
It is said that it is very important for countries, including Russia, to fully support authentic and moderate Islam. What is meant by these words, and what countries, or let's say, what Islam comes under this category?
I think that Islam naturally comes under this category because in its nature it's tolerant, it's accepting from the very beginning of Islam, it's accepting the existence of other faiths along with the existence of Islam. Even in Dar al-Islam, there were other faiths like Christian and Judaists living there, and we know that even in the medieval history that even both Christians and even Jews were escaping from the Jews in Europe from persecution to the Caliphate. So the tolerance of
most of the Middle Eastern countries, they contain all
all
the faiths living together in coexistence.
So I think tolerance, and the second important feature I think for nowadays is that Islam has been never forcing other the followers of other religions to come to be Islamized by force.
What happened to the culture of resistance? Does it still have any sort of significance in this sense?
No, I believe that resistance still has potential for remaining a very important force for the not only for the identity of the Arab society, but given the centrality, for instance, of the Palestinian issue for all Arabs. We cannot imagine that this idea or this notion of resistance simply is replaced by some sort of pragmatism which can be interpreted as giving up some very important
some basics and
basic
elements,
identity goals, objectives and principles of the existence of the nation and of faith, of ummah. So that's why I believe that it will remain. But we are living in my interpretation of this is that we are living in a real world, and we cannot do everything, at once.
All together.
And in order, to achieve your goals, you have to make concessions. You have to reconcile with the existing world. That's my view of this pragmatism.
Yes, but we have to make concessions. But concerning the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, we can see that in the wake of these awakenings and revolutions, and call it what you want, it was a bit glossed over, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And Palestine is not now the centralized issue, according to Arabs. It's more of working hard on toppling this regime and that regime, and not paying attention to Palestine, the occupied territories.
I think the notion that I'm using the word marginalization of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, that marginalization of the Palestinian issue. But in my view, the Palestinian issue will remain probably the main issue for the identity of the Arabs as a whole society, in general. If you have this sort of, because the Arabs have multiple, in my view, as an observer, as you say. Though I lived many years in the Arab world, so I consider myself partly a part of this world.
Society, yes.
I believe so. But there are multiple identities. So you are Arab, you are Muslim, you are Egyptian, you are probably Christian or Muslim, but you are part of the Islamic society because Islam is one of the pillars of this general identity. And you are something else, you have some social, professional identities. So under all these identities, I think the Palestinian issue can give you sense of being a part of this nation that has been suffering for many years. But for some time being, and probably for some time to come, so the issue of reformatting the structure of these regimes and governments, and the nature of the government will be a very important issue, because first you set up your home, you have to clean up your house after you changed everything.
But what is going to take over, pragmatism in the coming days concerning the Palestinian cause, or resistance?
As we know, nobody is giving up resistance. For instance, if we take Muslim Brotherhood, the leaders of the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt now, they are saying that So they, for instance, they have been always against peace treaty with Israel. But they are taking now this
But they're not willing to stop any sort of accords that happened before during the reign of Mubarak.
No.
Especially the Camp David.
Yes,
you know.
but even now they are accepting, in my view, my understanding is that they are accepting Camp David as a reality. It's a reality, and for the sake of their nations, for the sake of the real world, they are accepting Camp David as a reality, though they were against Camp David in the very beginning. And I think it's real pragmatism, but it doesn't mean that they gave up all resistance to the occupation. Occupation is not accepted, even by us. We are not a part of the Arab world. For Russia, occupation is not acceptable. So regardless of our differences in views, probably, that we have different views of the nature of resistance, what can be done, what can be not done, and our adherence to the peace process, we still believe that there is no place for occupation in Palestine.
Now, President of the Council on Foreign Relations, Richard Haas, he said the principal characteristic of the 21st century international relations is turning out to be non-polarity, a world dominated not by one or two or even several states, but rather by dozens of actors possessing and exercising various kinds of power. Now, how does this non-polarity differ from other forms of international politics? How and why did it materialize?
First, I'm not buying the interpretation of Mr. Haas. You know, there's you can play words very easily. One is saying one polar world, multipolar, polycentric. I prefer the expression polycentric word because it gives us the real meaning of the real understanding of what's happening in this world. We have polycentral world system where we have a lot of centers, but without these centers who are playing more important role than some minor actors, simply there can be no balance of power, because you cannot say that, for instance, a country like Indonesia on the one hand and probably some smaller state near Papua New Guinea, they're playing the same role in the international relations. No, the country with the Islamic country with 240 million
highest number
population
of Muslims in the world,
playing some very important role. That's why we have polycentric system, which is gaining more momentum.
You agree with the notion of what he meant, that it's not only unilateralism and unipolar world anymore, with the United States having this domineering power over the whole world?
Of course, the United States is the most powerful power, but even if we
it's
accept
more powerful
this
than
idea,
Russia?
To a certain extent, unfortunately, yes. I would like to have Russia as the most important, but I am very modest, and I think there are a lot of areas where the United States have more power, more resources. I mean, military, for instance, power, a lot of other things. Though we have parity in our nuclear weapons, we have a lot of other parities, and we are developing in a very good pace. But at the same time, even if we take this as a reality, okay, we have this United States, this powerful state, but one state, so whatever it is, it cannot rule the world. And it's not enough. Whatever it has, the United States, of their powers, they cannot rule the world by themselves. Anymore. No, not at all. Not capable, not able. Even if we look at their adventures in Asia and in the Muslim world, we are seeing that I don't know what was totally successful. If we take Iraq or Afghanistan or some other places.
It's a complete failure.
Yes,
it's a complete failure. And this also echoes what Chinese President Hu Jintao in the recent talks in New Delhi, the BRICS talks. He said that he called actually for a multipolar approach to world politics. We're going to stop now, Dr. Na'oumken, for a short break, and then we'll be back to talk and discuss the role of Russia, Putin, the next version. Okay, a short break and we'll be back. Stay tuned. Welcome back, Dr. Na'oumken. Now, you said in 2007 in one of your articles titled Russia's New Middle Eastern Policy Momentum, that the Middle East does not rank high on the scale of Russia's foreign policy priorities. Is it still the case now?
I think the case now is quite different. First of all, Russia is developing very quickly, and Russia is coming back to this very region. First of all, we understood that we're capable to play some role, and we can see during the last crisis in Syria that we are already playing this role. We are assertive in projecting our vision of what can happen, what can't happen in this very region.
What is the new position of Russia-Putin, the second version now? Is it going to be like a kind of, is he going to adhere politics of self-protection of Russia, or he has a sort of, let's say, a clear vision of what they are doing?
Mr. Putin is changing because everybody is changing, and here I think we're having a new Putin now in this term, and he has developed into first of all into a person who is very active. It's a very activist position in his foreign policy.
But he is also pragmatic in the sense.
He is pragmatic because he has to take into account the existence of different interest groups in Russia. And the realities I mentioned in the first half of our interview, there are realities. We have to make concessions. But at the same time, there are basic principles with Russia, which Russia is now defending, like non-interference, non-attacking, no military intervention.
They're not interfering in the Syrian politics of what is going on now?
No, we're against military intervention by any means, but we are not planning. We haven't intervened anywhere and interfered anywhere.
But you sent your warships to the territorial waters.
No, the warships are circulating in the open international waters, and we have one facility in Tartus, which is only used. It's not a military base. It's used for very, practical purposes of refilling our ships with water, with supplies, and reshuffling, personnel. But there is no military storage of some weapons or something like what is usually meant by the military base. It's not a military base. It's a facility for serving our ships.
But doesn't that give a sort of messages to the others who want or who wish to have a sort of military intervention in Syria?
I think we're protecting not the regime of Assad, we're protecting Syria from this military intervention.
The people of Syria.
The people of Syria, because we believe that this military intervention will be a disaster. There is some beginning of a internal conflict, of probably civil war, which is in the very beginning. And we want to avoid this civil war. And by military intervention, by supporting one side, the side of the opposition, and providing weapons to this opposition, you can simply, easily use it for just transforming this conflict into real civil war in the reverse, probably sectarian war within the Muslim world and regional war in the Middle East.
Now, would Putin try to wake up the Russian bear, as they say, and get back Russia to its international role, effective actually role, as a pole?
I think that if we accepted the idea of multi-central world, we're not trying to come back to the idea of bipolar world or whatever. And we are not going where we want to spare our resources. During the Soviet days, the Soviet state was sacrificing the interests of the people, ordinary people, in order to provide some aid to the others under the banner of ideology. We are not providing any sort, we are not projecting our ideological interests. That's here we are pragmatic. We are pragmatic. We want to serve our own people. And the Russian people, so our people are more considered about their jobs, the salaries, the health and education
and
system.
And the economic situation.
And the economic situation and everything, and it's improving. We need to improve. We need to improve our lives. We want to achieve, better living standards. And Russia is developing very quickly. And that's why we don't want to spend resources for some principle.
But this is the dream of the Russian, to get back to their power as a pole, not to say as a bipole part of like the US a pole and the Russians as on the second side of the pole, but they want to get back to their position, to have an upper hand, and perhaps the Syrian card gives them some power in the region, let's say in the Middle Eastern politics.
We're not seeking any sort of domination, as our Western colleagues seek. We're not seeking for dominating in Syria. We haven't been dominated. For instance, if we take the first years of Bashar Assad's rule, Bashar came as a president of Syria in 2000. And until 2005, there was no single visit by Mr. Assad to Russia. He was visiting France, Britain, but no visits to Russia. Only in, so 5 years.
Maybe this is a strategy.
It's strategy or whatever, but it's not a sort of, it's not a client state, nothing. Assad was more probably interested in improving, in developing his relations with the West, especially because Russia probably was not strong enough to provide such an assistance to Syria that it is providing now. I mean political, in the form of promoting national dialogue and trying to enhance reconciliation, not civil war. Instead of civil war, reconciliation. Now we are more capable to do that, but we are not seeking for any sort of dominance or hegemony. We are not for, we don't have military bases, we don't have military presence. That's it. We have our immediate surrounding, which is the Commonwealth of Independent States, where we have very special interests. Then if we go southwards, you have neighboring states to the CIS, which is Iran, Turkey, Afghanistan. Iran and Turkey are very important partners for Russia. And then comes the Arab world, and we're trying to play the role of a mediator, which is possible, wise diplomacy.
Let me go back to the project of Russia. What is the project of Russia now?
The project of Russia is now...
If we can say a project, let's say.
I'll tell you.
Yes, and tell me about its axis. Who are the main elements of its axis, and the project in particular?
Our main project is modernization of Russia, to create strong and modern state. We have a lot of needs to do inside the country, to modernize our economy and to protect our huge borders. We're a huge state. We're 1/6 of the earth, It's amazing. So that's why we have to spend a lot of resources to protect ourselves from possible, aggressors, because we've been witnessing a lot of these things during our history.
Who are you afraid of? Which countries in particular?
We have to have some potential. We are not in particular afraid of anyone. But we have to protect ourselves, to defend ourselves from any possible, attack from anyone, whoever. That's why we have to think about our defense system. So it's better not to have anything, to live peacefully. We are living peacefully.
So this is the project of Russia.
The project is modernization.
The modernization.
Live peacefully, to provide peace, security, development.
Aren't you looking for a sort of partnership? And if so, is it going to be a sort of economic partnership, or it's like a partnership of dominion?
Yeah, no partnership.
Or you want just to have a mere role, let's say?
No partnership of dominion. We have multi-layer and multi-level system of partnerships, because we have certain philosophy of new international system. Financial system, because the system which was based on dollar is not working anymore. The system is collapsing in Europe. There is crisis. And there are a lot of other things we have to change. International law is violated, as it happened in Libya, for instance.
Right.
So under there was a resolution of no-fly zone, but it turned into direct military intervention. And the feeling of the Russian people is that the Russian people were cheated by the powers who made this military intervention. So we abstained from voting, we let it pass, but in the end, so there was military intervention. We don't want it to be repeated in Syria. It's a matter of principle. So that's why the multi-level system of partnerships, for instance, BRICS is one format.
Sure.
The Collective Security Treaty Organization within the CIS is another system. We have a customs union within the CIS between Russia, Belarus, and Kazakhstan. And we have a very specific relationship between Russia and Ukraine. We are interested in moving closer to Europe and the European Union, and we have good relationship with the United States. We need partnership.
In view of the current tensions between the West and the Islamic world, how can Russia give or present itself or be an example to other countries?
I think we are providing good example because our historic coexistence of Muslims and Christians in one state, and not only cooperation and coexistence, but the emergence of very really multinational, multi-confessional society where everyone knows a lot about the others and live peacefully. We have this heritage because it started. There were some problems in the Middle Ages, but the turning point was the decree of Catherine II in 1778, when there was a decree of tolerance of religions, when the Muslims, started to have full freedoms, in Russia, in the Russian Empire. And so I think it's given very good examples of tolerance and coexistence to other states.
Right. Professor Nعومكن, thanks a million for joining us. إذا لقاء جديد وشخصية جديدة وموضوع جديد، ودائما من الداخل، من كل الميادين. إلى اللقاء.